Hi everybody, it's Mr. Wessner. We're back today to continue the story Take a Wetlands Walk by Jane Kirkland. And today we are going to be reading about the magnificent music makers of freshwater marshes. I love how so many of the headings in this book, like magnificent music makers, incorporate the literary device of alliteration. Alliteration, of course, being the repetition of the same beginning sound. So we have magnificent music makers. Let's see, I can't remember for sure. Go swoosh in a swamp will come up a little later. Relax by a river. So a lot of times we see those ideas. Wetland and watershed wizard was another one we just looked at. So all of those things are alliterations. It's alliterative language because they are repeating the same beginning sound over and over. Okay. This is probably my favorite section of the book, by the way. Sometimes you can hear a marsh long before you see it, thanks to a few species of birds and a little frog. The Canada geese, mallards, and red-winged blackbirds form a marsh chorus that sings the arrival of spring. Marshes are also recognizable by their plants with soft stems, like cattails, which grow in the shallow water and provide habitat for animals. And that's what I kind of have here behind me. Hopefully I'm not blocking them if I don't fall off the chair there. But there are some cattails back here. Right now we're waiting for the new cattails to grow in the springtime. But these are cattails. Right now they've turned, the cattail part of it has turned into that fluffy seed ball there. So they're reseeding themselves. But that's a cattail. Okay. You can hear birds flitting around in the cattails, and if you stand still long enough, you might see them too. You want to scare them away if you're trying to watch them. Red-winged blackbirds are my favorite birds of the marsh, and I completely agree. They make a really cool sound. We heard one earlier, and I'm going to show you that video right now. Okay. So that is the red-winged blackbird, and that call you hear is the call of the male red-winged blackbird. It's hard to see the colors on his feathers with the lighting the way it is. That's him. And it's an unmistakable call. Once you've heard that call and realize that it's a red-winged blackbird, you'll know it every time you hear it. Very, very distinctive call for the red-winged blackbird. Beautiful, beautiful little bird. So that was the red-winged blackbird, and I know it was hard to see the red wing patches on there, but I'll try to show you some pictures of that as well. I love their conqueree call. Every spring I look forward to their return. The males usually return to the marshes before the females to claim their territory. They defend their territory when strangers are near, like me, and when strangers are near, like me, they give an alarm call. My friend Jim Peck explained to me that dominant males get the best territories. They are the ones with the biggest, brightest red patches on their shoulders. Now, I identify the dominant males in a flock. See if you can. And right there, we see those red-winged blackbirds. Now we see the male here. The female is designed to blend in better, so we have kind of the standing out bright colors there for the male, but the female that would be sitting on the nest, her coloration and her feathers are colors that would help her blend into the wetland plants behind me. And then there's the little nest with the eggs. That caption says males above left and females above center. Let's see if I can do this. Of the red-winged blackbird look very different. And you'll see that with a lot of birds. You see that with cardinals. You see it with blue jays. So lots of birds, the females have softer colors or milder colors so that they blend in, not as flashy. They weave nests in the reeds, and males defend their territory. Okay. So that's the blackbirds. Wetland plants, they mentioned the cattails here. Some other wetland plants that they talk about on the sidebar. There's three main types that they go over here. Another adaptation of wetland plants is how they grow in wet areas. Some grow under the water, some float on it, and others come up through the water. Wetland plants can be divided into three groups that describe how they grow: emergent, submergent, and floater. Think about those terms and you'll kind of be able to imagine what the plants are like. It says emergent plants grow in water, but part of the plant sticks up above the water, so it emerges, it's coming out of the water. A good example of this is the common cattail. Submergents grow completely under the water. They are submerged. Think about a submarine. It's under the water. Most are rooted in the ground. An example of this kind of plant is eelgrass, which we could see on page 15, it says. And floaters are plants that are rooted but float on the surface of the water, such as lilies. Some floaters are free-floating like duckweed, and here is some duckweed that I found today. Okay, and right there is a good example of that duckweed that they're talking about. No ducks in it this time, but there you see some duckweed. All right, I said this was my favorite page. That's because it has one of my favorite creatures, one of my favorite animals is the spring peeper. Okay? I want you to listen to this. Okay, so it's evening now, and these are the sounds of the marsh. You can hear the spring peepers. You can hear red-winged blackbirds up in the trees all around us. Occasionally you hear another frog as well. Now a lot of people hear that and they think, oh, that's some kind of bird, or oh, that's some kind of insect. But it's not. It's a tiny little frog. And I think they have such a cool sound. Okay? It says spring peepers are tiny frogs that make one heck of a large noise. They're found in the eastern half of the U.S. and Canada. They're nocturnal, active at night. You know what it's called when an animal's active in the daytime? It's called diurnal. So we have diurnal animals, nocturnal animals. Nocturnal animals are the ones that are active at night, like the spring peeper. So I don't hear them right now, and I won't hear them right now, because it's not until evening, as the sun starts to go down, that you'll start to hear the calls of those spring peepers. So the video I showed you, or the audio I shared and video I shared with the spring peepers sounding, I took at a different time, because there are no spring peepers out at this time of day. During the night, the marsh is alive with their calls that sound like 1,000 tiny bells jingling. I love that even though this is a nonfiction book, they include a lot of our literary devices. We talked about alliteration before, right there. During the night, the marsh is alive with their calls that sound like 1,000 tiny bells jingling. What is that? We're comparing their calls to the sound of 1,000 tiny bells jingling. And we're using the word like to do it. A comparison statement that uses like or as is called a, very good, a simile. Every spring I look forward to hearing the spring peepers, and I sleep with the windows open just to hear them. And I could have written that paragraph because I couldn't agree more. I love when I hear the spring peepers for the first time every spring. It means that spring is coming. It means the weather's going to get nice. So I love hearing those spring peepers. I love that sound. And luckily where I live, I can hear them right from my house because there's some water not far from where I live. So the spring peepers kind of live there and make their sounds. Canada geese graze, nest, and honk in marshes, lakes, bays, and rivers. If there is open water, they will spend the night in the water where they are safe from predators. You can often see and hear large groups of geese coming into the water near sunset in the spring, fall, and winter. And again, near my house, there are always geese flying over to fly into the Frankstown branch of the Juniata River. So I always see and hear the geese. Mallards quack me up. Ask a friend to make a duck sound and they would say, quack. That's the call of the female mallard. Males make soft sounds. Like Canada geese, these ducks can make any spot, even your backyard their habitat and nesting site, but they are partial to marshes. When you are in a marsh, look near the cattails and reeds for animals. Listen for frogs, birds, and owls. Look near flowers and in sunny mud puddles for butterflies. Scan the shallow water for wading birds, fish, and dragonflies. Watch for waterfowl flying overhead. Look on the ground for animal tracks. Marshes can be loud, exciting places, or at other times quiet and peaceful. And right now it just so happens that this marsh is fairly quiet. There's some birds calling in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear that. But earlier today I was hearing those red-winged blackbirds really loud and clear, and in some of the other videos that we've watched for this, you've heard that as well. But right now, it's pretty quiet and peaceful. The frogs earlier. Yeah, marshes are beautiful places. The other sidebar that I have here talks about a kind of wetland that we don't have in our area, but it's called a prairie pothole. Prairie potholes are a special kind of wetland that appear on the Great Plains in Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, Montana, and the western provinces of Canada. These small ponds and marshes were formed about 10,000 years ago, but they have been disappearing since the 1800s, when settlers began draining them to farm the land. The prairie potholes are an important habitat for many species, especially migrating waterfowl. Who cares? They do. Conservation organizations are working to preserve and protect prairie potholes. One is called Ducks Unlimited, and you can learn more about them at www.ducks.org. Okay? And we have some pictures here again with some captions to share. There's the cattail. It says that parts of the cattail are edible. Native Americans use the cattail plants for medicine. So if you knew what you were doing, parts of those would be edible. Right there is my little spring peeper. Okay, they are really small. They're about the size of your thumbnail. The spring peeper frog is very small. They average about 1 inch. They're hard to see, but easy to hear. Then we have some ducks. It says during nesting season, adult Canada geese we have some geese. Molt. They grow new feathers. Therefore, they don't fly. They stay on the ground or in the water with their youngsters. And then finally, we have our duck, and it says feathers on the male mallard's head are iridescent. Sometimes they look blue, other times green. So depending on the way the light's catching them, they're iridescent. And there's another one of those funny little cartoons. That's a kind of duck called a ring-necked duck. It says a ring-necked duck doesn't really wear a diamond ring around its neck. It is named for the purplish ring around its neck that is hardly visible. Okay. So that's some information about the sounds of the marsh. I hope you have a chance to enjoy or to explore a marsh on your own and to hear some of these sounds in person, because while it's fun to hear them on a video, it's even more exciting, I think, to be out in nature and enjoy them in person. So thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time, folks.